What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about Heroes Reborn number 5 by Jason Aaron, R.M. Guerra, and Ed McGuinness. And in this video, we are going to learn how the Nighthawk of Heroes Reborn differs from the Nighthawk that we're used to. More importantly, we're going to learn how this version of Nighthawk is not only a pastiche of Batman, but why this version of Nighthawk has some strange connections to Spider-Man. And last but most certainly not least, we're gonna learn what popular Marvel Comics superhero is currently hiding under the mask of Ronin in Mephisto's weird world of Heroes Reborn. We're gonna talk about all this and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button because it truly helps the channel out. That said, let's hit that intro.
Word to wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple eyes. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so when we picked this book up, one of the first things that caught me off guard, and I just want to get this out of the way, this doesn't really have much to do with nothing, but one of the first things that I found really interesting was we get this inner monologue from the character Nighthawk, aka Kyle Richmond, and he's talking about how his parents never wanted to have a child and that he just kind of happened, and his history actually sounds kind of different from what we're used to knowing about this version of Nighthawk. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that this is not the Nighthawk of Earth 31-916. This is apparently a revamped version of Nighthawk, just like all of the other versions of the Squadron Supreme of America superheroes. They are all simulacrums created by Mephisto. And in one of the other ways that this one differs is that even though we're witnessing the dialogue, the inner monologue of the character Nighthawk, what we're seeing is actually something more akin to the costume that Nighthawk wore before he picked up the original costume of the original Earth 616, Kyle Richmond. But this is not either version of Kyle Richmond under this suit. This is actually Kraven the Hunter wearing what he calls the skin of his enemies, of his prey, trying to prove that he's a better Nighthawk than the actual Nighthawk. And of course, we also learn that while this character Nighthawk is a Marvel pastiche version of Batman, he comes with all the trappings. We learn in this universe that Luke Cage is not a hero for hire. He's a cop. He's, in fact, the commissioner. He is Commissioner Luke Cage, and he is basically the Commissioner Gordon to Kyle Richmond's Nighthawk. And another way that this also, for those of you who may not be familiar with Nighthawk, normally Nighthawk is more of a businessman, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist of sorts, but in this world, he's a politician. He's a congressman, actually, and he is considered to be one of the weakest congressmen, if not the weakest congressman in the entirety of all of Congress. However, this version of Nighthawk is still a rich person. He still comes from money, and he, in all likelihood, probably does still have some corporate leanings, but he uses his money to, of course, fund his crime-fighting career, but he also keeps a life model decoy on deck when he has to step out all of a sudden. One that apparently can do voice-cracking impersonations and the Denzel Washington glory single tier. He has to fight crime, and the difference here in this particular version of the character versus maybe other retellings of this character is that during the daytime, Nighthawk is powerless. Normally, Nighthawk is a normal person. He is not some superpowered individual. He is a regular person who works out all the time, trains rigorously, and has tons of gadgets and intel at his disposal. This version of Nighthawk has a serum that apparently is coursing through his veins that apparently apparently activates at night and basically makes it to where he can go toe-to-toe with some of the world's superpowered criminals. He also has a cave, which he calls the Night Cave, and he even has his own vehicle called the Hawk Rod, something he muses that Sam Wilson, the Falcon, and also now the Captain America of the MCU, he talks about how Sam used to call it the Hawk Rod, something that kind of strikes him as a sore moment because something very terrible happened to Sam Wilson, something that doesn't get talked about immediately, but I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it now because it is very important. Sam Wilson in this universe is dead. He basically got Gwen Stacy. In this universe, Green Goblin had dropped him from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, sending him careening to his death while his wings were damaged and basically made it impossible for him to be able to fly. And as a result of Green Goblin doing this during the day, Nighthawk didn't have the power he needed to get there fast enough to save Falcon's life. If you dig into Heroes Reborn Double Action #1, you'll also learn that much in the same way that Spider-Man kind of indirectly killed Gwen Stacy by trying to catch her. This is something that actually is repeated here with Nighthawk, that he actually does get there in time to save Sam Wilson, but the nature of how he tries to catch him results in Sam Wilson's neck breaking. This is why if you go back and maybe possibly you read Heroes Reborn Young Squadron #1 and you wonder why Nighthawk had such an interest in trying to catch up with Miles Morales, it's for that very reason. It's because Miles Morales was inspired by Falcon and decided to take up the mantle as an homage to the fallen hero. This is actually where some of the Spider-Man connections start to happen. You see, with Nighthawk being a pastiche of DC Comics Batman, he has to have a Joker, and who else would make a better Joker for him than the Green Goblin? And the Green Goblin's mission is no different in this universe than what it is for Joker in DC Comics universe, and that is to break Nighthawk, to push him to his absolute limit, to force him to kill. And this is why at Ravencroft, which is of course the Marvel Comics equivalent of Arkham Asylum, Green Goblin has unleashed all of Nighthawk's greatest foes. We see characters like the Lizard, Bullseye, we see Sabretooth, we even see a very different version of Dr. Octopus, one who no longer has the metal arms, but has now invested his time into creating a killer octopus army. Not only that, but of course, having more connections to Spider-Man in this universe, he also has a Venom. Now, of course, we know that the Venom that we saw in Heroes Reborn #1 was the Red Skull, now going by the name the Black Skull, and this version is no different. This is something Nighthawk brought back from Battleworld. We see him in a conversation he's having with Black Cat from when he originally had the symbiote costumes, then learning, just like how Peter Parker did in Earth 616, that is actually an alien costume. And in this particular instance, the alien costume, the symbiote, the Venom symbiote, wants to be back with Nighthawk, even threatening to leave Red Skull just to get back to him. But none of that is either here nor there. There's various and sundry other characters who pop up in this. We even see Nighthawk and Deadpool duke it out once again, just like they did in the Young Champions Heroes Reborn tie-in. But where the real hit comes here is when he finally catches up with the Green Goblin. We learn that Nighthawk, apparently in this universe, he is also friends with Gwen Stacy, and Gwen Stacy at this very point is still very much alive, and Green Goblin knows that this particular character used to be one of Nighthawk's sidekicks. Gwen was brought in as a sidekick by Nighthawk when her father was killed, and he trained her as Nightbird, or as she likes to call herself, Night Gwen. And what Green Goblin is trying to do is he is trying to make Nighthawk choose. Either Nighthawk kills him or he kills Gwen Stacy. Now, of course, Nighthawk is going to try to make the save that he wasn't able to make with Sam, and he does actually save Gwen Stacy's life. Unfortunately, however, this version of Green Goblin also has a trick up his sleeve that DC Comics Joker often employs: Joker Toxin. Only in this case, it's Goblin Gas. And it drives Gwen Stacy crazy. She was infected with this before he even threw her off the ledge. Now, in the case of Joker Toxin, where it usually makes people laugh uncontrollably until they inevitably die, Goblin Gas seems to have a similar effect on that person as it does to Norman Osborn, where they become more powerful, they become more potent fighters, and because Gwen is already a trained fighter, acrobat, and tactician, that makes her even more dangerous to Nighthawk, and he is actually able to stop her and subdue her, but the Green Goblin, his mission is still something that's on the table. Somewhere in the midst of the fight, Nighthawk throws his patented Hawkerangs at Gwen, hitting her in the arm. But instead, what he's done, he's given her a weapon. She takes the same Hawkerangs and throws them back, only this time, she's not throwing them at Nighthawk. She throws them at the Green Goblin, slashing him in the face with it and leaving him mortally wounded. And this puts Nighthawk in a very actionable position because now he has to decide whether or not he is going to let the Goblin die. And the Goblin, knowing the predicament that Nighthawk is in, that he has a no-kill policy, which is very interesting considering the fact that the Nighthawk of Earth 31916 has no compunctions about killing anyone. I found it very interesting that he has that same code as Batman and Spider-Man, but Goblin, knowing this, smashes the Hawkerangs even further into his face, trying to kill himself. And it's here that something is revealed to Nighthawk, what is actually going on with this universe. You see, in Heroes Reborn #1, when Nighthawk meets with Blerd, it's made very clear that Nighthawk was already at least somewhat aware that the world they live in is not the way reality originally was, that this is some kind of a rewrite of the world they initially came from. And it's here that the Goblin reveals that, thanks to sharing a cell next to the Silver Witch, that he's learned that this is not actually the way the world originally was. And more importantly, the Goblin is actually telling Nighthawk to do something that is incredibly interesting considering the fact that they're enemies. And it's to not let anyone change the world back, because the Goblin likes this world just the way that it is. This actually leads Nighthawk to go digging a little bit into what is going on, and this is actually how he finds out that Maya Lopez, aka Echo, aka the current host of the Phoenix Force, was recently busted out of jail back in the pages of Heroes Reborn #3. And it's here that he realizes something's not right about it, that they got out right before everything went tits up. Of course, he has files on Maya Lopez, but at the same time, he recognizes Blerd from their previous encounter in Heroes Reborn #1. But the person that I think throws him off the most is when he recognizes Steve Rogers. He doesn't necessarily say right off rip that oh yeah, I know who this is, I know this is Steve Rogers, but he recognizes the shield. He even comments that, is that a Star-Spangled Shield? I guess it's kind of Jason Ayer's way of letting us know Nighthawk knows something is up, and he's finally putting two and two together. But the question is, will he do something about it? Because much like Hyperion, and maybe even Blerd to a lesser extent, and who knows, maybe even the Power Princess, we'll learn more about her stance on all this in next week's issue. But it seems like of all the characters in the Squadron Supreme of America, a lot of them seem to have some kind of an inkling that something's not right with the world, but they're willing to just go with it because they feel like either it's where they belong, even if it is a lie, or they just don't care enough to do anything about it, or just too short-sighted or short attention span to even remember that they even noticed it in the first place. And Nighthawk kind of falls into the same category as Hyperion in a way where, yes, he knows that something's not right. He knows this world is not necessarily what it probably should be, but for whatever reason, he just knows this is where he belongs. So he's probably going to be just like Hyperion in a sense that he's going to do everything he can to stop anyone from changing it. Now, that said, we also notice that in a secondary story, Nighthawk has an encounter with a character we're all familiar with by the name of Ronan, a character who has often been played by multiple different characters. Now, in the previous issue of Heroes Reborn #4, we learned that Wakanda does in fact exist in this universe. It was kind of played as though originally in Heroes Reborn #1, Wakanda wasn't around and wasn't a thing, or at the very least, it was so secret society nobody knew about it, and apparently the very latter, in fact, is the case. And we learned that in this issue, the Ronin of this universe is not Hawkeye, it's not Blerd, it's not anyone else for that matter, but in this universe, we learned that Black Panther has been moonlighting as Ronin, and more importantly, Blerd and Steve Rogers are trying to recruit him for the next part of their mission in trying to stop the Squadron Supreme of America and undoing this Mephisto reality. This was actually a really cool issue. I actually have been enjoying this version of Heroes Reborn a lot more than I initially thought I was. Originally, when Heroes Reborn came up, I was like, oh god, this is gonna be the dumbest thing ever, and I don't want anything to do with it. I'm gonna ignore it. But they've actually been holding my attention with the storyline, maybe because they are using characters that I really like the Squadron Supreme of America, which I've always been not the hugest fan of, but I have always been a fan of this team and always liked them and wish they were used more in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I've always been kind of thinking that at some point in time since Jason Aaron's run started on Avengers, when they reintroduced the Squadron Supreme of America with Phil Coulson at the helm, I kind of had this thing suspicion, yeah, we are going to get a Civil War style moment, only instead of it being superhero registration versus non-superhero registration or pre-crime versus no pre-crime, it's going to wind up being who is the best superhero team and who has the right to actually defend the world against all of its greatest threats. And I kind of have this sneaking suspicion that's what it's going to come down. I'm not saying it's actually going to be Civil War, but it did wind up becoming this, and it's becoming this battle between the Squadron Supreme of America, Marvel Comics version of the Justice League, versus the Avengers. And yeah, I'm kind of here for it. I actually want to see this play out. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share this video all over the internet and with all your friends so they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to the Marvel Comics event, Heroes Reborn. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about Heroes Reborn number 5. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.